Hey there, this is Stacy Raske, and I'm Corey Walmsley. I wanted to talk to her about her book, which is coming out. We're so excited about this, July 9th, 2019. And Stacy was one of my students this year. We worked together in Brilliant Business Book Intensive. So I wanted to capture how she did with writing her book, any challenges, and the whole process, so you guys can learn all about it. So welcome, Stacy.
Hi, thank you so much, Corey, for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Sure, thank you for joining me. So can you talk a little bit about what you do and then talk a little about your book?
Yeah, absolutely. I always kind of refer to myself as a boundaries expert and abundance coach, life and business strategist. But really, the core of what I do is I help amazing female entrepreneurs who are struggling with scarcity, self-doubt, and overthinking build the confidence and consistency they need to reach their high-level goals. And basically, at the core of it is they finally believe they're good enough to be successful.
Yeah, that sounds really familiar. um, so tell me about your book and why you wanted to write a book for your business.
Uh, oh yeah, absolutely. So at the core of this block that these like amazing high achieving women and all of this really stems from my own personal journey and my story. And that's really what I was this like high achiever, but it was always done from this place of not enough. I always believed I wasn't good enough. And I had this terrible inner critic that was always like, you can't do that. Who are you? Um, always focusing on the things that were wrong and how I was not good enough. And so I was really inspired to focus on how I serve my clients, but by sharing a lot of my story and the processes that I'd created to help solve this specific problem. So my book, which is Be a Boss and Fire That Bitch, Quiet Your Inner Critic and Finally Believe You're Good Enough, is doing just that. It's this really simple process to quieting the inner critic, but addressing that root issue, which is never feeling like we're good enough. And so we're the biggest blockers to our own success because of it. And so, it's a clear path to rebuilding that foundation that really is kind of that source of those limiting beliefs of not good enough, not worthy, not deserving, of really thriving personally and professionally.
Okay. Yeah, I've read the book, and
Yeah.
everything you said, it sounds like something that a lot of people really need to address. So what kind of sets your book apart from others that are helping women with, self-doubt and those kind of issues?
So it's funny. In doing my research, I found that really talking about this inner critic and some of these beliefs is kind of, there's not a lot out there.
Mhm.
You would think, as much as people talk about this in personal development and business development, that there would be more material really just hitting that nail on the head, but there was a big gap that I noticed. So and I was inspired long before finding there was a gap. So it actually was kind of interesting.
Mhm.
Um, but I think what I love the most about what I created in this book is that it is a step-by-step process. Follow the book, everything's explained, plus all of the additional supplemental resources that I provide, the tools to help follow through on all of the steps that are in the book, can really help someone transform who they are being in their life. And as an entrepreneur, most of us being solopreneurs, if you're not in the right space, your business is going to suffer and you're not able to serve your clients at the highest level.
Right. Um, I love that you mentioned that you did the research to see what else was available in your niche too. And it's awesome that you found a gap and you were able to fill that. That's something I like to talk to people about is, going out and seeing what else is available out there, see what other books are doing well, what they're not doing well, what people are looking for. because I don't want to say what other books aren't doing well, but what other books haven't addressed. And, sometimes where you fit in is the perfect spot to expand. So I wanted to ask you too, what was your experience with writing before you did your book?
It's funny. It was always very short stuff. I was pretty creative in maybe writing some copy for, landing pages or some stuff on my website, emails, social media posts, things like that. But, and as a kid, I would love to write poetry and things like that, kind of short story stuff, but I'd never done anything of this magnitude, or at least, what I believed before writing this book, and especially working with you, was this sort of overwhelming magnitude that would go into writing a book, which wasn't the case, which was super exciting. But yeah, this was my first time ever jumping into the realm of writing at this level.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I hear that a lot from people where they say they've written like some blog posts or articles or little pieces. Did you feel like it was a really tough jump to go from something that small to something big?
Not really. It wasn't. Because I had your help, it made that process so easy. To say, let's break this down. Let's work with what you're already doing. No need to reinvent the wheel. Just taking how you're helping people and sharing your own personal stories in a way that made sense. And so it really made the process so much easier than I ever thought it would be prior to writing. And I think jumping into it right out of the gates, having the guidance and support of, a writing professional like you, definitely made that smoother transition than getting inspired to write a book and then struggling for years to with it on the back burner and never really ever coming to fruition.
Well, I'm happy to hear you say that. And I'm really glad that we were able to sit down and get this book done so quickly. Can you say how long it took you to do this?
Yes, absolutely. So the writing process really from start to finish was three and a half months.
Mm-hmm.
And then by launch on Amazon, I think it'll be right around 5 months. Right around 5 months-ish, somewhere in there. So yeah, I mean, really, your 90-day program, I needed to give myself a little bit of extra time, but I mean, really, it was just over 3 months to get this book done, which is mind blowing when I tell people. I mean, there's some people in my networks that are like, wait, you were writing a book? Or I remember you saying, hey, writing a book, and now you're like, hey, it's going to be on Amazon. Like, what just happened? That was so fast. And I'm like, well, I had a vision, I had a goal, I made it happen, and I had help.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that having the help, and beyond just writing a book, having the help on any process is so helpful. And I always talk about goal setting. Did you set a goal of having your book out by this summer, or did you say, hey, I'm going to start this program in February and I'm going to have it done at a certain time?
Pretty much, yeah. Okay. I mean, that's part of my nature is okay, once I'm all in on something, I know for myself, I need to give myself a deadline. I can be realistic and flexible with it, but I've got to give myself some sort of time frame construct, some structure to make sure I follow through and have a deadline. And I was a little flexible. I mean, I set an initial deadline to finish writing by the end of April, and it ended up being mid-May, which, it's totally fine.
Yeah, I think it's very helpful to have goals and, figure out when you want to have things happen, because I know people have talked to me. I've talked to some people for 3 years who want to write a book, and I'm like, set a deadline, say when you're going to have it done. And they're still talking to me about writing a book. So I'm glad you set that and we got it done. But I did want to talk about your challenges, because I know we've talked a little bit about this, especially since you're the boundaries expert and
sabotage. Well, yeah, I mean, that's with my book, right? It's really focusing on the process of getting through the sabotage and understanding the message in the sabotage and the critic. So yeah, absolutely. And since you were just talking about those people who, I have been back and forth with you for 3 years and they're still not doing it. It's all mindset and beliefs and this those upper limit problems, that critic that's telling them, no, don't shine too brightly. No, don't do that. Or, oh, you can't do that. Who's going to read it? Who's going to listen to you? And that was what came up for me. It was such an interesting process in personal development, just writing a book. So it wasn't necessarily the writing process per se. That actually was a lot easier than I thought it would be, although I did find I had to work with myself. So that was a little different than maybe how you would write. Even though I gave myself time to write every day, and I would a little bit, for me, I needed to just feel inspired and totally in the flow to write. So sometimes, I could just sit down on a Sunday morning and just pump out a whole chapter and then maybe not write for 2 weeks.
Right.
But where it came up the most was resistance in getting the book done and to you. That's why I had that extra couple of weeks. But then I crashed immensely after I submitted it to you and just was kind of in this tailspin of really pushing through all the limits of discomfort and growth I'd ever put myself through before. And the sabotage came up. So afterwards, it wasn't just resting. I mean, I went through a period for a few weeks of actually hiding out, and just going through a lot of my old sabotage cycles. And what the challenges were the old deep programming around visibility. I mean, my whole childhood was, don't shine too brightly. It makes other people uncomfortable. Don't be too good. It's going to upset so-and-so. I was actually just talking to my mom about it because, of course, I share childhood stories in the book. And so, but we were talking about these scenarios. So there was that. And then, of course, I'm writing about the belief of not good enough. So my inner critic cycle kicked in that whole time. Yeah. The not good enough, what, is what's in there, is it good enough? And what really helped me through that was remembering, wait, this is not my only book. I can write more books. I don't have to put all the stories in here. It doesn't have to be perfect. And the biggest one, I think, for me was the fear of rejection. And this is so huge for so many people. And I talk about this a lot in the book because it's such a big deal for me, where I was so needing the acceptance and approval and validation of people around me, especially my inner circle, that the fear of rejection was coming up a lot. And it was much less about the audience, like the greater audience, like, is it going to be received? Am I going to be a bestseller? What's the feedback going to be on this? But it was more about the people I was writing about in the book. So, I'm sharing real, raw, intimate stories about when I was my worst towards my husband, or, what it was like having childhood trauma. And I'm talking about my parents. And so that fear of rejection came up a lot. And I was just, a wreck for a few weeks. But I allowed myself to lean into it and really grieve the loss of who I thought I should be for decades of curating that in order to make room for the amazing person I'm meant to be. And that includes being an author and putting this book out. And so it's been a beautiful, eye-opening, transformational process that I would encourage anyone to do, because it's just amazing and so different from anything else.
Yeah. Well, I love hearing you say all that. And yeah, it as somebody who's written a lot of fiction before, it was very interesting to hear your perspective, because you are very open about talking about everything that you're going through. So it's interesting to hear you talk about how this triggered you, or this was affecting you this way, or all of a sudden you feel like you need to hide. And, as somebody who has a business, like, all of those things are going on behind the scenes. We don't see that all the time. So I love hearing that about your writing journey, because that, of course, that helps me help other people a little bit better. So what did you enjoy most about the process?
Oh, gosh. it was kind of interesting in terms of the amount of clarity I gained for my business. Like, and just who am I writing this for? How am I helping? Who am I serving? There was just so much clarity and direction on that side of it was just phenomenal. And at the same time, it was such a powerful healing journey.
Yeah.
It was just mind blowing. So, the leaning into sort of marinating in all of these stories. And obviously that's not for everybody, and that's not what everybody's going to be doing. This would just happen to be the purpose of my book, and sharing a lot of that real rawness. I mean, just like you said, you're like, I'm open and talking about the struggles because people do see this, confident face that's doing a Facebook Live or, speaking at an event, and, or any other professional who is in that expert space. People come to them and just don't ever sometimes think about the person behind the business.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I share all of these things. But yeah, it really was so powerful, and it was really fun. I mean, as much as it was like challenging some of these old things that really no longer serve me, just, it was almost this amazing discovery process, just me and where I'm going and what I'm about. And it was just so fun. So fun.
Oh, I'm glad. And I love, I know we were talking a little bit about like doing your, being vulnerable and sharing your story. And a lot of marketing today has that kind of at its heart. I was talking with somebody the other day about how, people are sharing more about who they are as a person. That's actually something that I started working on way back when I had my corporate job. Was I worked for a national laboratory, and we actually were supposed to make scientists seem real, like real people. But that was kind of, the beginnings of how I started seeing this grow was, making certain people stand out and be like, oh, your face is almost as well known as your logo. And at that point, it's like, oh, okay, this is a real person running this business, and their ideas align with mine, their heart aligns with mine, and that's who I want to buy from. So that's why I've, talked to a lot of people about including their stories and, being vulnerable in their writing. And I love that you did that. You were wonderful about that.
Oh, thank you.
So I want to switch gears a little bit here and talk about the publishing process, because you are doing self-publishing. We're actually still kind of in that right now. So far, what do you think about the publishing process? Has it been pretty simple? Have there been any hiccups along the way?
Oh my gosh, it's so simple. I mean, so simple. And really, it just comes down to how much you want to do yourself, because there's so many amazing resources and people to help in that process. I mean, I am doing it through KDP, so it's the Kindle Direct Publishing, and they have a program that you can download onto your computer, the Kindle Create, and you just literally upload your Word document, and they've got all the tutorials on how to set it up, upload your covers, like do all of that. Like, it's so easy to do. And then they have pretty much a very similar situation as well for your paperback version. So yeah, I mean, it's been the only thing I think that has frustrated me so far in the process is that Amazon will not let you create your author profile until your book is uploaded.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I'm like, come on, I don't have to publish my author profile. Could I at least like get the stuff up in some of that downtime between release? But literally, I mean, because I'm working with you, and it was amazing to basically outsource the layout to you. And then having incorporating another team to help me launch the book on Amazon, and kind of helping do a lot of the promotional items, and then having a variety of experienced published authors to reach out to, and sort of crossing the T's and dotting the I's to make sure I've got all of my bases covered. And I made sure I gave myself enough time I've been doing the back and forth with my graphic designer for the cover, and, back and forth with you on the editing and the formatting, just different things like that, and getting the momentum going already well in advance. I think 6 weeks before, I was already like, hey, here's the release date, get on the list, so plenty of marketing time.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have a wonderful marketing plan. I know you've been working with somebody on that. I think sometimes when we're working on a book, we have this idea that it's all like, sit in a closet for X amount of time, write this book, and then you're just done with it. But there is a lot of planning beyond that. Whether you're doing traditional publishing or self-publishing, you have to have an idea of how you're going to market this piece and what you're going to do with it when it's done. And I've been kind of following, because marketing isn't my specialty, but I've been kind of following what you're doing, and watching the emails come in and the Facebook Messenger posts, or Facebook Messenger messages, and the posts. And I mean, it is a very well thought out process on that. Has it been pretty easy for you to implement all that stuff?
Yeah, for the most part. I think it was a lot to juggle in terms of, okay, I am giving myself such a short time frame. I mean, literally thinking about, we started working together in February, and then, again, just over 3 months getting the manuscript to you for editing, and, 5 months later having this launch. So while I was writing my book, I'm also going back and forth with my graphic designer on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with launch people. I'm creating some of this stuff. And so there was a bit of challenge, especially right there at the finishing the book. I did have to just put all the rest of the stuff down and just focus on getting it done. Cause I'm like, I can't focus on marketing something if the book itself is not done. I mean, come on, you got to do step 1 before step 27. So, yeah. But I think because I've just constantly been focused on the vision, my bigger vision of fulfilling this purpose to share this amazing, powerful message with people. And my vision was always far beyond the book itself being done, and that was the vision that kept me moving, kept me going. When it was like, oh, look, I've got to juggle this and I've got to juggle that with regard to the book, and still show up, serve my current coaching clients, continue to do marketing. And there was a few, ebb and flow weeks where I was not heavy on social media or heavy on my marketing plan. But that was okay. It's just giving myself permission to do the things that I needed to do. But overall, I think scheduling enough time in there that I am available for the ebb and flow, and having help. Again, I've got so many people, in this process. I mean, I think my thank you page at the beginning of my book is going to have like an insane number of names because, and I already did a video on it, that it takes a village to get a book out. And I think perhaps that may be the biggest downfall for so many writers who never seem to get it done. They think they've got to do it all on their own.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't. I mean, you see some of the biggest writers, published authors out there, fiction or nonfiction, they're out there researching, they're engaging with people, they're getting stuff from other people. You don't have to do it all on your own. And I had this amazing team around me from the beginning. From the beginning. And I think that was really the key to getting it done in such a short period of time and having it such a high quality book at the same time.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on the team thing. So when your book comes out, I know we're doing a digital copy, and are you doing the hard copy at the same time, or are you doing that later?
Very soon after.
Okay.
I mean, I kind of want to do that initial Kindle launch window, for that push to, fingers crossed, I'm going to say, yes, I will get Amazon #1 bestseller, but it'll be Kindle Amazon #1 bestseller, which is fine.
Yeah.
But then when we do the official paperback release where people can get that hard copy, that's when we'll do some different marketing. Where it's like, oh, great, now that you've got your digital, a lot of people like to have that hard copy. We'll actually do some press releases and things around that too. So that'll be super fun. And then everybody who loves audiobooks is like, are you going to read it for Audible? So finding some ways to get connected with somewhere that I can actually do the reading and read my book for my Audible.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Until you actually mentioned that to me this spring, I was like, oh, I couldn't even thought of that. I'm not an ebook or an audiobook person. I'm usually traveling with 2 little kids in the car. So so that was just, I think that's a brilliant idea too, to include that, because, people are learning in different ways. So having those different options, I think, is ideal for anyone who wants to really spread the word and reach a bigger audience. So I want to go ahead and wrap this up, because I know we could talk all day about this.
Totally.
But let's wrap up. What would you tell somebody who wants to start writing their book? Maybe they've been thinking about it for a while, but they're just not sure what to do.
The biggest thing is to reach out and ask for help. Again, like having that team, that support team of people who were experienced in the industry was absolutely integral to successfully getting my book out, not only so quickly, but so easily. So that's really the number one thing. So, everything just perfectly aligned for you and I to get connected right at the time where I felt called to write the book and get this out. So, that was top number one. And because it was such an amazing process, I'm already like, yep, got my idea for my next book. I'm going to start going into that. So yeah, I'm super excited about it. But really, yeah, find those people, start getting that team, find those professionals to support you right out of the gates, get your questions answered, and then it makes the process much easier.
I completely agree. Okay, so you're launching your ebook on July 9th, and where will people be able to find the book? And can you repeat the whole title again so everyone knows?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So the easiest landing site to get it is firethatbitchbook.com, because the title is Be a Boss and Fire That Bitch. Quiet your inner critic and finally believe you're good enough.
Awesome. And I'm going to put the link below this video on my blog, so everybody will be able to click there and go get your copy. I have read it a couple times already since we've been working on it. I've been editing it, and it is a fantastic read. It's so well written. And Stacy, I'm really, really proud of you for putting this book out.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited. Yeah, you're actually the only one who's read it. Nobody else has read it yet. Well, but still, it's like, oh, you read books all the time. So it's so good. Thank you. Yeah, I'm so honored.
Not much longer. Everybody's going to be reading this very soon. So yes. So thank you again so much for joining me. And again, click the link below, grab your copy of Be a Boss and Fire That Bitch, and you guys will absolutely love it. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.